Hey folks, welcome back. It's Mike with Kiss Dog Training. Today we are going to cover a topic that is causing much stress, anxiety, angst in the animal welfare rescue world, okay? That's also going to include folks like me as a dog trainer, veterinarians, doggy daycares, anybody who is in that realm of dealing with the public and their pet dogs. And it's this rash of relinquishments today. The rescues are all full. Everybody is, packed to the gills. They rescue a dog out. They do their due diligence. They do an in-home visit. They have people fill out questionnaires. They do referrals to the vet. Everything seems great. And then 3 weeks later, the dog is being relinquished for a number of reasons. And that is kind of what we're going to talk about today is some of those reasons and how maybe if we think about this process a little bit differently, we might be able to help the process. Okay, so before we get started, I am going to do a shameful plug for a book. It's the last one that I wrote. It's called So You Want a Dog, WTF. It's what the fluff, not the bad word. It is the book that I wish people would read before they get a dog. It is all about what to expect. How much is it going to cost? How much time am I going to have to put in? It is everything you wish you knew before you adopted a dog. But unfortunately, we live in this wonderfully reactive world where people kind of forget the word proactive of being ready when they start a process. And that's what the book was about. So if you know somebody getting a dog or you're feeling frustration now, even now would be a good time to read the book. It's available on Amazon. You can get it anywhere you can get a book. Ebook, print copy, audiobook, you name it. We've got all the formats covered. And it's really a nice, inexpensive book just to kind of get your headspace right about getting a dog. But why are we seeing this relinquishment, rash, I guess? So, let's start with number one. I think that people have too much going on in their lives sometimes to think that they need a dog. And I'll even flip it and maybe be a little bit more negative and say that I think some people feel that they have the right to have a dog, that it is part of growing up and it is this and it is that, and we're just going to do it whether we're ready or not. You take it, if you've got two people both working swing shifts on different, one's AM, one's PM. There might be a kid or two involved. They're working 12-hour days. They're already pushed pretty tight when it comes to finances. And then they get a puppy and they realize that, oh, there's a lot more work to this than I actually thought. People just don't kind of look at that before. They make an impulse, oh, the puppy's cute, I want it, and because I want it, I need it, and because I need it, I'm going to get it, and, being ready, be damned, okay? So, number one is the too much going on scenario. The number three thing that we're really starting to see is I can't afford this dog, okay? And they don't realize that, okay, they're getting puppies, and puppies have to be potty trained. So I have to go out and buy a crate, and I have to get a kennel mat, and I have to buy cleaners, and I have to buy special puppy food. And then I have to take it to the vet, and there's about 3 rounds of shots that I have to go through, and that's expensive. And then the vet tells me that I need to be on, heartworm, flea and tick, plus the vaccines. Okay, then they call a dog trainer, and by this time the dog is creeping on the adolescent stage, and they're starting to get a little wild and crazy at home. And we say something like, well, look, if you're both working 8 to 10 hour days, we need to get doggy daycare as part of this routine. Maybe do a Monday, Wednesday, Friday routine of doggy daycare. Well, there's another cost, and all of a sudden all this starts building up, and they didn't have anything in reserve, or they didn't have anything budgeted for a dog, but because the dog was cute, they decided to go out and get the dog. Then they go back to the rescue, and now that dog has to go back into the system. So I think in some cases, the can't afford scenario becomes another one. Next, we kind of look at the idea of someone's passed away, or somebody got put into a assisted living facility and they don't allow dogs, and nobody in the family wants the dog. So now they're calling every rescue in town and they're wanting to relinquish the dog. And, you know, this is just a natural part of life. But it is a natural part of life where if you set things up originally and do the talking, I mean, I'm 54 years old and I just rewrote, you know, my last will and testament and, you know, my trust information and stuff like that. And I, even as a dog trainer, never even considered this. But the individual helping me through this process was like, well, what are you going to do about your pets? You know, knowing that I'm a dog trainer. And I was like, wow, okay, yeah, I guess I do need to make some phone calls, find out who would take what dog, you know, how we would set it up, you know, would I leave some financial help, you know, if I do pass away, that a certain amount went to the people who were taking the dog to help them out with some of the expenses. But again, it goes back to that old, are we being reactive or are we being proactive? If we're being proactive, we've already thought about this, we've already talked to everybody, instead of waiting till the very end and then it just gets dropped in somebody's lap and then they're trying to figure out how to deal with it. But those dogs come into the shelter and then we have to find homes for them. Another reason, which is, you know, kind of more common in my world as the dog trainer, and I'm sure veterinarians see it too, is it's a bite, a fight, or an aggression issue. And usually these are the, you know, the things we've already talked about kind of came up. You know, the entire thing, we weren't ready, we weren't financially ready. You know, the dog is now, you know, in a situation that is totally different. You know, dogs have that really critical social development period where they learn to be open and ready for the world and willing to try new things and being outgoing and friendly. But that it has to happen between, let's say, week 13 and week 20, week 3 and week 20. So, and in fact, a lot of people are now trying to back that 20 weeks back to about 15 weeks. So we have an even shorter period of time to make sure that the dog has met all the people in the world. This is another thing that they have to do if you go out and get a puppy. And this is something, you know, we're talking about the bites, the fights, and the reactivity. Well, if we adopt a dog who's 18 months old or older in the shelter, we don't know what that socialization has been. So now you've got that to deal with. So if you've got jobs where you work a lot of hours and you have to work weekends and you've got kids and the kids are in sports and now you've got a reactive dog that you start isolating away in the back bedroom or the basement so that it's not growling at anybody who comes into the house, the problem's getting worse. The problem's not getting better. And it's funny, the way I kind of wrote these examples is it starts at the very beginning with a puppy and it's just kind of working through. But every stage of life has challenges, and we got to be ready for those challenges. Now, I am a firm believer that aggression cannot be fixed. I think aggression can be managed, modified, and improved. I think we can improve our routine. We can do a lot of counter conditioning and take a dog who is way up here and get them way down here, but they're always going to have that side that we got to be careful with. And that's where management of the owners becomes critical. I always tell my clients that management's 100% foolproof until a human being gets involved. And when the human beings get involved, well, then somebody left a gate open, somebody forgot to lock the front door, somebody didn't put the dog in the crate when the doorbell rang, we forgot the muzzle on the way to the veterinarian, but I'm already running late, so we're just going to try to, you know, throw caution to the wind and hope it worked. Or I forgot to give the dog the medication to make the visit easier that the vet has already recommended because I'm so busy with everything else in my life. And you can see how these things get out of control for people. I think it's important, I guess, for us in the dog welfare, you know, rescue world, for us to give the grace to the people because they're frustrated, they don't know what they're doing, and they feel trapped and they don't know what the next step is. But at the same time, we need the people on the other end of the equation, which would be the people with the issues who haven't set routines, who haven't set things up for success, to also give the people working in this industry a little bit of grace. Because while you're dealing with one dog, we're seeing, you know, me on an average week, I see 20 dogs a week. You extrapolate that over a month, or a year, and it's really hard. I mean, and if you're dealing with the world of veterinary medicine and you're having to do the people doing the behavioral euthanizations in some cases, we have a really stressful job. Now, it's no more stressful than the people going through the process, but sometimes we start butting heads. And I think everybody just giving each other a little bit more grace will make all these processes go by a little bit better. And here on my next one, I said too much time going on creates a problem behavior, and that problem behavior leads to the relinquishment. Well, let's just take the most common one, potty training. Okay, so if I've got to potty train a dog, I've got to commit to taking the dog out every hour on the hour. Then it's going to be every hour and a half on the every hour and a half, and then it's going to be every 2 hours, and it's going to be every 3. And I'm going to teach the dog that the inside is not the appropriate place to go, but the outside is. And if I'm leaving the dog in the crate for 8 hours a day, well, if it's a puppy, I need to be there 2 or 3 times a day to let the dog out. And 2 to 3 is a minimum to let them out, go to the bathroom. It might be a neighbor, it might be a family member, it may be getting doggy daycare started, but we can't just leave a puppy in a crate for 10 hours and expect them to be potty trained, because they're not getting the routine of I go out that door to go to the bathroom. And if we're really sneaky, we can say I ring that bell and then I go out that door. But again, these are things that people don't think about before they get a dog. And then once they do get the dog and then they want the rescue to take it back, this is something we haven't even talked about. If the rescue is full, then you're going to have to hold on to the dog for a period of time till they get an opening in a foster who will then take that dog and start doing the things you weren't doing so that we can get the dog ready to be adopted again. And keep in mind, all of these fosters and all of these shelters are usually run, for the most part, by volunteers. Yeah, they're in a rescue. There are some probably paid positions, but that's more on the executive management end. And, the fosters are doing their absolute best. The volunteers are doing the absolute best to teach all these skills. But, sometimes you have 2 or 3 fosters, or you might have 3 bottle babies that you're dealing with and getting up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, to feed. So the problem then becomes these problem behaviors start cropping up because the routine and the being ready isn't happening, and then those reasons end up becoming why the dog is going back to rescue. Potty training is a huge one. Pulling on leash is another one. Being reactive at the front door is another one. Being reactive on a leash where I can't walk the dog because the dog loses its mind whenever it sees anything. Dogs that are destructive in the backyard. And I'll be honest, the backyard is a scenario where, okay, the dog's a pain in the butt in the house, so I'm just going to throw it out in the backyard because I'm tired of it. I need a break. Well, then the dog becomes a nuisance barker, and then you get a citation. Or the dog becomes an escape artist, and now it's at the shelter again because animal control picked it up. Or it starts digging holes in your backyard or becomes destructive and chews the siding off your house. All this stuff. I mean, anybody in this industry could tell you all sorts of stories like this. But if you've gotten to the point where you're isolating the dog away from people, or isolating the dog away from you because you're frustrated, or this type of behavior, you're already headed down the path of failure. And what we got to do sometimes is just get this much traction, this much going in the right direction, so that we can build on it and build on it and build on it. But, the other aspect would be the expectation of people who are not part of this industry of this should be fixed in a couple of days, right? I can just ship the dog off and have it trained. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way with our kids. It's a lifetime commitment, and you don't train your kids. You go through incremental, I call them base camps. Like if you're climbing a mountain, I have to start here and then I have to go to base camp 1. I can take a nap at base camp 1 so that I can make the trek to base camp 2. And then I can kind of relax and get my breath and I can go to base camp 3. But you can't summit the mountain any faster than going through all the base camps. And that's what I think our industry could be better at, warning people or writing books or doing these podcasts or videos or however we can get this information out. And we probably need to be a little pickier about who will adopt and rescue dogs. But at the same time, people will tell us everything we want to hear, and it will sound like the absolute greatest adopter on the face of the planet. And 3 weeks later, they're returning the dog. And it's not their fault. It's not our fault. But it is something that I think if we communicate better, if the trainers are talking to the vets and the vets are talking to the rescue. But then again, like I said, in this industry, everybody's swamped. So just getting email communication through the client, the veterinarian, and the trainer is hard. Okay? So there aren't a lot of great answers other than patience, time, and routine. Okay? Let's see here. And lastly, the last thing I just want to talk about is human impulse control. Not every person is ready for a dog. And owning a dog is not a right, it's a privilege. And if you can't handle raising that dog and dealing with the dog and not looking for the quick fix or immediately going to punitive measures, to train the dog, which sometimes makes things worse, or to throw the dog on Facebook and say, anybody want a dog? These are the things that are starting to happen, and they're happening more and more. The last time I remember this kind of scenario was, the wave of COVID dogs that got adopted during COVID and the wave that came back because people just weren't ready for it. And it's getting back into that kind of realm that, we're seeing an awful lot of relinquishments. So the big thing I want to take away from this is, number one, please share this information. Okay. Number two, if you want a dog, be prepared. I've preached for years. I'm in my 18th year as a dog trainer. Hire a dog trainer before you get a dog so we can talk about the energy level of your family compared to what kind of dog you want and what are you going to want to do with your dog and what kind of breeds fit your lifestyle and what should you be ready for, and I can set all that up and get everybody in the family in the room ready to go the right way. And a lot of families are like, well, we probably ought to wait a few months while we're getting ready for this, but you can't just go in, look at a cute dog and say, I'm going to take this dog home. Okay. I am sure this topic is going to bring up a lot of questions. Hell, I would imagine it's going to make some people very happy and piss off a lot of other people. If you've got questions or comments, please leave them. And we'll do our best to handle each and every one in a professional manner. And I can kind of hope that everybody will be professional in their comments to this information. But it's really everybody working better together as a team of animal welfare, rescue, and the people who are adopting the dogs. But at the same time, it's the people who are adopting the dogs who need to educate themselves first before they adopt the dog. So this is Mike with Kiss Dog Training. It's not a super long topic, but it is a very important topic. And if you've got any questions, fire them away. That can be the next topic. If one of these really tripped your trigger, then let me know and we'll cover it next time. This is Mike. We'll talk dog next time. Kiss Dog Training. Keep it simple, stupid, and always have a routine. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.